Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I am your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout their business career and share them with us so we can learn from them as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. On today's show, our special guest is Eric Vest. He is the owner of Y Capital, providing private equity investments and the Yellowwood platform to assist CEOs with fundraising and capital partners with deal analysis and portfolio management. So, Eric, welcome to the show today. And I'm going to start off with a question that I always start off with, and that is this. If you were able to go back in time to when you started your very first business, what's the
Mhm.
number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Get a mentor. That's probably the main one. Um, when my first company was 1994, and I sort of lucked upon the birth of the internet in San Francisco, I so wish that it would have been my second or my third company because I made so many boneheaded mistakes. And I was full of hubris and was not really one for taking a whole lot of advice from folks. And in retrospect, I really wish that I had found a mentor and someone who could effectively just help me traverse the learning curve of being an entrepreneur a lot more quickly than than uh, than I had to struggle through. So that would definitely be it. Find a mentor.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, I'm going to add on to that a little bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. So, beginning of your business, getting a mentor, but whereabouts are you right now with that? Because as we grow and we
Mhm.
build, obviously there's new stages, almost new levels that we have to be in business.
Mhm.
What's your advice around mentorship as you continue to grow in your business as well?
Well, it changes. I mean, there is an older gentleman who I consider my mentor for sure. But once you sort of get more advanced in your career, seeking out peer groups, I think is the true solution. So I joined a group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and it is really designed to be a peer network to help business leaders grow personally and professionally. But the way that happens is by putting you into the mix of a whole bunch of peers and establishing a framework that you all sort of interact with each other. And it's all around vulnerability and learning and sharing. And that has really proven to, I mean, the organization was life-changing for me. And so it's not that point, then it's not just learning from a single person, it's learning from myriad people with many different experiences to share across, all industries, all cultures. And YPO is a little, you've got to be, I think at this point, the baseline is running a $16 million company before you're 45. But there's a complementary organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, that is based on the same framework. They're sort of their sister organizations, and the bar is much lower. And so and the people who are in EO absolutely love it, just like a lot of Kool-Aid drinkers like me when it comes to YPO. So the peer networks, once you get actually into the mix, I think is absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's a really good piece of advice because I think we always hear people, you need a mentor, you need a mentor.
Mhm.
But those peer groups, I do agree they are quite life changing and business changing, being able to get into those because it's the collaborative mindset of what you learn from each other, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. That's a great piece of advice for sure there, Eric. Um, as you've continued to grow in your business, one of the questions I always love to ask because it's always just interesting because everyone has their own journey on this. I'd love if you feel comfortable sharing what's the number one biggest challenge that you faced in your business? And second part of that question is what's the lesson that you learned from that?
The biggest challenge that I have currently,
It could be currently, or it could be like if you were to look back in your business history, going, "Oh man, that one challenge that was we would have made or break it, at that point, and this is what I learned from it." So it could be something current or something in the past, whatever just kind of stands out the most in your
Yeah.
mind.
Um, I think that there are sort of two pieces. One is strategic and one is tactical. The strategic one is understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are as quickly as possible and backfilling. Because a lot of entrepreneurs will try to, and not just entrepreneurs, but even people who are, they're in the corporate world and they're moving through a management structure, but a lot of people don't kind of understand until much later in their careers about what their superpowers are and where they are really weak. And instead of trying to struggle against that, it's accepting that you do have weaknesses and everyone has weaknesses and making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people whose superpowers are your weaknesses. That's number one. That's the strategic one. The tactical one is the biggest challenge. Um, it all sends around, it's all around capital. I like to say it's if you've got a Ferrari but you got no gas to put in the tank, then it's a doorstop. So it's and the capital, and that's one of the reasons why I transitioned from being an entrepreneur into the capital side of the equation because I know how difficult it is to find a great capital partner who is not just doing due diligence from a numbers perspective, but someone who's actually sat in the seat of a founder or a CEO and can truly relate to the business challenges that they're facing and not just browbeating them on a quarterly basis for missing numbers. And so there's really no good solution to it because capital is really hard to come by. And going back to when I was raising, venture capital in the early 2000s, it was the game hasn't really changed. It's hopefully early stage VCs. You visit 200 of them for for one group to write a $1 million check, and it's a really difficult world. But the interesting thing is like, and I've sort of moved downstream of that into private equity, where I'm only investing in healthy, profitable companies, and just because that's I like that stage of businesses and how you can really generate substantial returns on a risk adjusted basis. But as a founder, it's finding that capital partner to believe in you and really support you was absolutely the biggest challenge when you're going from 0 to 1.
Yeah, yeah. What are your tips for people listening to this that, I want capital, I don't know exactly what to do, or maybe they've been trying to find it and they're just really struggling.
Yep.
Do you have like your top, let's say, two pieces of advice, other than obviously hiring you? That's number one, right? Having a talk with you, see what you can potentially do. But outside of that, what's the big tips for people that are struggling in that area?
Well, I think that well, number one is don't give up. It to fundraise and to be a startup founder requires a tremendous amount of grit. So that just undying desire to succeed in fulfilling your vision is absolutely paramount. But the other thing is obtaining clarity and kind of goes back to the mentor piece, right? Because you need to have someone who is giving you giving you constructive criticism about what you're doing well and what's going to be a yellow or a red flag to the capital markets. And it's actually it's one of the biggest reasons why I built the Yellowwood platform because I had originally started out by creating the platform to effectively automate to a large degree our preliminary due diligence when we're vetting deals. And I had an epiphany that, wow, I would have really loved to have this report that tells me exactly how my company is perceived in the capital markets, not just by private equity, but whatever the appropriate asset class is. And so obtaining that clarity so that you can prepare properly to go into conversations and reach out to capital partners, um, It's super important because one of the unfortunate realities about the capital markets is that when you go out for capital, you really get one shot in front of a capital provider. And if you're not prepared, and a lot of being prepared is just understanding how they think about businesses and about your business and your experience in particular, and having that knowledge is will allow you to strategize much more effectively. And frankly, it doesn't matter if I'm a pre-revenue fintech startup or a $75 million oil producer. If I'm looking for capital, that same dynamic applies in that I really need to understand how I'm going to be perceived. I've got to take my ego out of the way, of my vision out of the way, and put myself in the shoes of a capital provider and someone in the capital markets who is going to undoubtedly be looking at my business in a bit different manner than I'm looking at it from the inside and as the leader and the visionary.
Yeah, yeah. So I hear a lot of what you're saying there is you said take the ego out of it and look at it from the investor standpoint as opposed to kind of the emotional baby perspective that we have building a business and everything. Are
Mhm.
there any tips on how to best prepare for that, for being able to present it in a way that would really resonate with the investment partner?
Yeah, it's there's no it's kind of like when you're bringing a new product to market, rule number one is talk to your potential customers and talk to
Mhm.
lots of them. And when you're going out for capital, the answer is that it's the exact same formula. You've got to talk to people who are early stage VCs or private equity professionals or strategic acquirers or whatever it might be. The challenge is that not everybody's got that available to them. You know, if you're lucky, you might have a mentor or two, or you might have some friends who's someone who's a venture capitalist who can at least give you an honest opinion from their perspective. But in the absence of that, going back to the Yellowwood platform, that's exactly why we built this, is so that CEOs and founders can obtain that clarity so that they can prepare properly before they go out to, and there's no charge for that. It's fun,
Mhm.
going back to like, they can hire me. It's like there's no hiring me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can a CEO or a founder, and it's regardless. We've got libraries across 55 different sectors, and it's regardless of the maturity of the company. So just about anybody can jump onto our website and fill out an intake form, and then we'll produce a really nice 6-page report that tells them exactly how the capital markets, if for the appropriate sector and for the appropriate asset class, will perceive their business, and strategic tips on how to utilize the capital, how to structure the deal, perhaps wait if you're cash flow positive, et cetera. It's very nuanced. And from the feedback that we've gotten so far with over 100 companies in YPO, it's we're getting 9 and 10 net promoter scores across the entire spectrum. So it looks like people are getting a lot of
Amazing.
value out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'll ask you in a little bit how people can find you, but I'd love to hear like over the next 2 to 3 years, what's your goals with the business? What are you wanting to achieve?
Over the next 2 to 3 years, I'd like to have. So in Q2, we're going to be kicking off a $100 million fund to do on average five $20 million net investments, both controlling and minority. My goal in 2 to 3 years would be to have at least some of that capital deployed, maybe 75% of the way through investing that full 100 million, um, and just helping our partner companies grow. Um,
Mm,
it's really exciting being on the investor side of the equation and helping other CEOs um, just identify blind spots and understand in traditional industries how technology can really benefit all facets of the business, from improving EBITDA to improving top line growth, to improving enterprise value for to create win-win-win situations. So it's just super exciting, and I'm really looking forward to over the next seeing what happens over the next 2 to 3 years.
Man, that's amazing, man. That sounds really exciting. Well, Eric, for people that are wanting to learn more about you or find out about what you've done with Yellowwood, what's the best place for them to contact you?
The URL, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn and find out about us through that, but ycapital.pe is the URL. And it's between the website and LinkedIn, those are definitely the best ways to go about it.
Amazing. Well, definitely, recommend everyone listening check out Eric, particularly if you are looking for any sort of fundraising or capital partners. Definitely check him out. And Eric, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a great privilege having you here. And as a reminder for everybody, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. To find out more, try to message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn on LinkedIn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.